It looks like Kevin Harvick might retire at the end of the 2023 season, and Stewart-Haas Racing is trying to figure out who will be in the 41 car in 2023. And many drivers and former drivers, including Kyle Petty and Kevin Harvick, react to Bubba Wallace's suspension and the penalties. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsport stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to go start paint schemes and sponsorship news first. Let's jump on those really quickly. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Timmy Hill's 2022 Gener X generator scheme. They're going to be seen this weekend at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Honestly, I like the colors on this car a lot. There's not a lot going on with it, but I do like colors a lot on this car. It looks pretty good, in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Center's 2022 Freightliner scheme. They're going to be seen this weekend at Homestead-Miami Speedway. I like the old Freightliner scheme, don't get me wrong, but I do like they've made some changes for this month, of course. I think this one looks really good and looks very solid, in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Tanner Gray's 2022 Place of Hope scheme. They're going to be seen this weekend at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Good to see that Tanner Gray has a new sponsor for this weekend. It's very plain and very simplistic, but I like this paint scheme, in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is John Hunter Nemechek's 2022 Columbia PFG scheme. They're going to be seen this weekend at Homestead. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of this paint scheme. I don't like the paint color. It doesn't really match the car very well, and it's a little bit all over the place. I'm not a big fan of this scheme, in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chase Purdy's 2022 Toyota Tsusho scheme. They'll be seen this weekend at Homestead-Miami Speedway. I actually like this paint scheme. Colors look really good, and it's a very solid paint scheme. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chris Rice's 2022 iHeartRadio scheme that I believe we're going to be seeing this weekend at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Great to see that iHeartRadio continues to sponsor Chris Rice. It's good to see that he's got loyal sponsors with him, and I think this paint scheme looks awesome. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Nick Light's 2022 Geese Logistics scheme. They're going to be seen this weekend in the truck race at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Good to see Nick Lights has a sponsor that's very loyal to him. It's a different looking sponsor for him. Good to see Nick Lights also making a return to the truck series this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Vargas' 2022 Williamsburg contracting scheme that I believe we're going to be seeing this weekend at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Good to see that Ryan Vargas has a new sponsor for the weekend. I think the paint scheme looks really awesome, and I'm excited to see on the racetrack this weekend at Homestead. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chris Buescher's 2023 Fastenal scheme. They're going to be seeing debuts this weekend at Homestead, and we'll see throughout the 2023 season as well. I actually like this scheme. The only thing I'm not a big fan of is the number being as small as it is. I wish they would have changed it up just a little bit, but it's good to see that Fastenal will continue being a loyal sponsor of RFK Racing, and it looks pretty good. But the only thing I would change is the number just a little bit. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kaz Grall's 2022 LDIships.com scheme. They're going to be seen this weekend at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Excited to see that Young's Motorsports has a new sponsor for the weekend. I think this truck looks solid, and it looks pretty good, in my opinion. And the final paint scheme we are taking a look at is Eric Almirol's 2022 Smithfield Premium Bacon scheme. They're going to be seen this weekend at Homestead-Miami Speedway. The only thing that's really changing on this car is basically they've got a little bit on the car. I like the Smithfield car a lot. The only thing that's changing is they've got premium bacon on the front, the red text and all that. I think it looks pretty solid, though. In my opinion, it looks pretty solid. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Homestead purse money for this weekend for the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series. Of course, every single week, Bob Pockets releases the purse money for every single race. So for the Cup Series, it's $7,342,738. For the Xfinity Series, it's $1,392,256. And then for the Truck Series, it's $721,227. Honestly, pretty solid purse money, don't get me wrong. I wish the money would have been a little bit higher for the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series, but of course, the Cup Series is generally going to have the most purse money overall. I think it's solid purse numbers, but I would definitely have loved to see a little bit more increase in the purse, in my opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Tire Pros. As it was announced on Wednesday afternoon, that Tire Pros has signed a partnership extension with Junior Motorsports in 2023. They will sponsor Josh Berry for 9 races in 2023, and they will be associate sponsor of Josh Berry, I believe, for 24 races next season as well. Really excited to see that Dave Tire Pros will extend their sponsorship with the team. Tire Pros has been a loyal sponsor to Junior Motorsports for the last couple of years, and very excited to see if they will continue sponsoring him in 2023. I think it's exciting, and I think the car probably next year is going to look exciting as well. It's really exciting to see they've got a new sponsor for 2023, continuing to sponsor them next season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about MoneyGram. And MoneyGram is going to become the title sponsor for the Haas F1 team starting in 2023. It'll be a 3-year deal with Haas F1 as the title sponsor. Haas has been struggling to find sponsorship all year, especially after Urkaleo, a Russian sponsor, will not basically announce they will not be sponsoring, as they, of course, Nikita Mazepin dropped the sponsorship. Now they've got a new sponsor for the team next year. MoneyGram is a U.S.-based company, I believe, from Dallas, so it's good to see American-based branding coming in and sponsoring starting next year. Very exciting as well to see that MoneyGram will be sponsoring this company starting in 2023. Really exciting to see, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Martinsville. Now, Bob Pockrass reported on Wednesday there's a new grass burn in Turn 1 / Turn number 2. So in Turn 1 through 2, there's a new grass burn that's going through the corners. Honestly, I like that a lot. People will not be permitted for this weekend. I believe in the spring of 2023, people will be permitted to get on that grass burn. But for the upcoming weekend, next weekend at Martinsville, there will not be people being permitted to be on that grass burn. But honestly, I think it looks a lot better than I thought it was going to be. It's a shame that they're not going to be allowing people to sit in those stands. And stands are gone in the area because some people really sat close to there. But I think the grass burn does look pretty good and looks pretty solid. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about McLaren F1. As it was reported for the last couple of days, that McLaren F1 is going to be the first team in racing to have changing digital signage in the cars. They will have Google and I think Android 5G on those cars as a rotation for the weekend. I think this is really cool. They're going to have changing digital signage. I think that's something I've never seen before, and I think it's really cool to see they're changing up the signage for this weekend. I think it's really exciting to see, and I think it's really cool they've got some changing digital signage. I think that's really exciting to see for sure, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Homestead Speedway. Now, it was reported on Wednesday by Bob Pockrass that the Miami-Dade Board of County voted to give NASCAR $300,000 annually in cash for cup races for 2022-2025, and I think an extra $100,000 to help families out as well in the area. This is really cool to see. It means that the Cup Series will have a bright future, at least for the next 4 years, and will be able to help Homestead-Miami Speedway a lot, keep races going for the next 4 seasons. Very exciting to see for sure, and again, I'm very happy to see that my Homestead will continue to be around for a long time. It's a track that I think deserves to be on the schedule. The racing there has been absolutely fantastic. It's been absolutely superb, and I think it's definitely amazing for sure to see that they will continue being able to host races long-term for at least the next 4 seasons with this grant money. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Phoenix. Now, it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday that NASCAR is going to be buying advertising placements and billboards all over Phoenix to build buzz around the NASCAR Championship Week that I believe will be starting with the buzz this weekend to get people buzzed up for the weekend and for the championship race weekend as well. This is really, really cool to see. I would definitely love other cities to try us out when NASCAR is coming to town. I think St. Louis did that for Gateway, if I'm not mistaken. I think they did that to kind of build buzz around the weekend as well. And I think, especially for the event being sold out, I think it will help people probably tune into the race as well. And people, I think, will be able to try to tune in. So I think it's something really, really cool. I don't think this really has ever been done before. So I think this is definitely really exciting for sure. They're trying this out. I like it. They're trying new things. And I think trying new things is definitely a good thing for sure. Very excited to see that Phoenix is trying something new out, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about late models. Now, it's been reported over the last couple of days, and it's been rumored for a while, there will be a national late model series that was going to be debuting in 2023. Well, Track Racing Enterprises CEO Bob Sargent basically revealed that this is going to be the case. And a national series has been confirmed for late models, for pavement late models, in 2023. Many late model races, including the Winchester 400, are going to be part of this season. I think it's really cool to see that, because late models has been a growing breed. It's been really cool to see late models, especially how much they've grown over the last few years. We've been seeing more drivers, especially in NASCAR, go out and run late models. And I think this is really exciting. I think the Snowball Derby is probably part of that as well. So I think this is so cool to see there's a new national late model series that's coming into play. I think it's very exciting for sure. And I think for the future of late models and keeping that around, I think it's really good to see. And I'm very happy to see that there's a new national late model series that's going to be coming. I think it's really cool to see, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Red Bull. Now, it was reported by Andrew Benson, who's a really credible F1 reporter. He says the FIA has offered for Red Bull for the terms of an accepted breach agreement. Now, for those of you who have not paid attention, they really did not disclose the information on what it is, but basically Red Bull breached how much money on their budget cap they were allowed to spend. It was a minor breach, but it's a lot of money. Apparently, we don't know what it's going to be exactly, what the penalties are going to be. It's been disclosed and really haven't heard much about it. This is the first time since we reported on this last week that this is taking place. It's unclear exactly what it's going to be and how much they're going to be basically allowed to basically do. I don't know what it will be, like court case or whatever. I really don't know exactly. We'll probably have more updates on that as the week goes on, but it's very interesting to see that this is going on. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Mike Harmon. As it was reported by Dustin Albino yesterday that Mike Harmon has withdrawn the 47 from this weekend at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Now, the plan for the 47 car for Mike Harmon Racing is they're going to attempt at Martinsville in Phoenix. I think one of the reasons is they don't have a driver ready to go. Generally, they brought out Brendan Poole out in the 47 to try to get their car in the field. Because Brendan Poole will be in the 6th car this weekend with JD Motorsports, I think that's why Mike Harmon Racing will not be entering this weekend and will not be racing. It's disappointing to see that Mike Harmon Racing is not entering this weekend because it would definitely been really cool to see Mike Harmon Racing have a shot to compete. But overall, if they can't bring the funding and sponsorship and they don't have a driver ready to go, it makes a lot of sense to basically sit out. So I'm disappointed, but honestly, am not shocked or surprised that this is going down. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Stewart-Haas Racing. As it was reported this morning by multiple reporters, including Bob Pockers and Kelly Crandall, that Stewart-Haas Racing's appeal is going to be heard next Thursday, October 27th, for the 41 car. Obviously, one of the things is that the 41 team of Stewart-Haas Racing has been hit by some pretty big penalties as of recently. Mike Shibla has been indefinitely suspended for radio communication and race manipulation. I do not know if they are going to win their appeal just because of the fact with the situation of what happened with the 41 car, and with NASCAR adding more basically officials to the appeal board, and NASCAR not wanting to lose these appeals, because remember, the appeals board is an independent board. It's not owned by NASCAR. They wanted to add basically more officials, and more people from Stewart-Haas will be presented. We'll have to wait and see if they do win their appeal. But I think when we do get in and talk about this appeal, I think it's definitely going to be very interesting to see what happens for sure. But yeah, obviously, and overall, I don't know if they're going to win their appeal, but we're going to have to wait and see what happens, and we'll hear more about that as we get closer to the appeals happening. We'll talk about it when it does get officially revealed, but it sounds like there's going to be an announcement coming here very, very soon in regards to that next week. That will be happening next Thursday with the appeal. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about DGR Racing. As it was reported by Davey Siegel, the DGR Racing will be making a major announcement on October 27th at 11 a.m. So next Thursday, the same day of the Cole Custer appeal, DGR Racing will be making a major announcement of a change in their partnership. DGR Racing is expected to switch back to Toyota next year. They were usually a Toyota Truck Series team, but in 2020, they switched to Ford. Now, in 2023, they'll be switching back to Toyota, and rumblings are that they are going to be a Ford truck team, as they basically purchase a lot of the assets from Busch Motorsports when it comes to the Toyota branding in the truck organization. Word on the street is also that they will have 3 full-time drivers next year, and they'll have a 4th truck that will basically have a lot of Cup guys and some of their Xfinity Series drivers that will get an opportunity. So Taylor Gray is expected to be full-time next year, though I don't think he'll be 18 until March. He'll probably miss Daytona, but he'll be back, I think, for the 2nd race of the season. Tanner Gray is expected to be in the 15 truck next year, and it's also expected that Corey Heim, who currently drives for Busch Motorsports, will be driving one of the 4 DGR trucks. And the 4th truck is going to be a rotation number for next year with a bunch of Cup Series and some Xfinity Series drivers as well, getting some starts. When this does get announced, we'll definitely be reporting on that, but I think it's very interesting to see how they're going to perform. Are they going to step up to the same levels as Busch Motorsports did? I don't know if they're going to be honest. That's one thing I'm a little worried about, is are they going to be able to step up and run as well. That's one thing I'm definitely a little bit worried about, but I think at least Toyota has a stable that will at least be able to be Toyota once again. But it does hurt Ford's development because basically now you only going to have front row motorsports. Also, a lot of people asked about Todd Gillen. Todd Gillen does have another year on his contract, so Todd is not switching back Toyota in 2023. He'll be in the 38 car next year, so don't worry about Todd Gillen. But obviously, when it comes to DGR Racing, it's definitely good to see that DGR will be going back to Toyota. But this also means that Ryan Preece and Haley Deegan will probably be looking for rides. But I think both those drivers will be able to find rides going into 2023. So we'll definitely have more once the story does get reported. But DGR Racing is expected to switch to basically back to Toyota in 2023. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about GMS Racing. As GMS Racing also is going to be announcing their 2023 Truck Series driver lineup on October the 25th. So on Tuesday, October 25th, they will reveal their 2023 Truck Series driver lineup. The plan is for GMS is they're planning to add another truck, it seems like, to their operation. So they're expected, I believe, to be a 3-truck operation next year. Let's begin with the 2 drivers. First of all, we know that Grant Enfinger has a multi-year contract with the team, so he will be in the 23 truck in 2023. I also anticipate that Jack Wood is going to be in the 2nd truck next year, the 24 truck again. I would expect that he be coming back since he does have the sponsorship and the funding. And I don't think he's done good, but when you have sponsorship and funding, you're probably going to continue driving for your respective organization. I would expect that the 3rd truck is going to be interesting. So who will be behind the wheel of the 3rd truck? Now, it could be honestly anybody. It could be Chase Purdy once again. He gets back since we don't know what's going on with Chase Purdy for 2023. I think he'll be in another team next year, but we don't know where he'll be going. My assumption is it's going to be Daniel Dye, and I'll explain why Daniel Dye. Number one, Daniel Dye, I think, is an extremely talented driver. He's done really good in ARCA this year and was a championship threat in ARCA, and I think he'll do really, really well and be a championship threat. Second thing, Daniel Dye drives for GMS's ARCA program, drove for their ARCA program this year in the 43 car. So I would think he's been part of GMS's program for the last couple of years. So I would assume that Daniel Dye is going to go in a 3rd truck. Now, what would that number be? I would probably think it would be either number 21 or the number 2 truck. That would be probably the number that they are going to run for him going into next year. It's definitely going to be interesting to see for sure what happens, but it looks like GMS will be announcing their plans very, very soon. And once that does get reported, we'll probably talk about that on Tuesday when their lineup does get officially revealed, but we'll see what happens in regards to that when it comes to their lineup. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, is we're going to talk about Joe Gibbs Racing. Now, Ozzie Ganensky, who works at Sportsnet, put out a report yesterday basically saying that Joe Gibbs Racing will announce their 2023 driver lineups at the conclusion of the 2022 season, as per Joe Gibbs. They will announce their Cup and Xfinity Series lineups as well. Let's start off with the Cup Series program. It's anticipated their lineup is pretty much set at this point. We know that Kyle Busch will not be returning to Joe Gibbs Racing next year. Ty Gibbs, while it's not confirmed yet, is expected to drive the 18 car in 2023. I know he's not been great in Cup this year, but he's expected to drive the 18. We know that Mark Jr. will be in the 19 next year, but next year could be his last year. Denny Hamlin has a multi-year deal with Joe Gibbs Racing, so he'll be back in the 11. And we know that Chris Bell will be in the 20 car full-time next year as well. Let's go to the Xfinity Series. Because of the fact that we're going to see Ty Gibbs in the number 18 next year, more than likely, and Brandon Jones is going to Junior Motorsports next year, Joe Gibbs Racing is going to be completely open next year. So what are plans for Xfinity? I can see them expanding a 4-car team next year once again. I'll explain why. I think Sammy Smith will be full-time in Xfinity in the 18 car because Sammy Smith, I think, has done a really good job with their Xfinity Series program. I think there's a good chance John Hunter Nemechek will be full-time either in the 19 or the 20 car next year. And I think Trevor Bayne, there's a very strong chance that Trevor Bayne will be driving full-time with the team next year. I think Trevor Bayne's been one of the best drivers in the 18 when he's driven part-time. He's been a winning driver in that car, been a contender. He's come close to winning multiple times this year. Had one of the fastest cars in Las Vegas, but ran out of time to get up there. And also, you look how fast he was. He was really quick in a lot of races, especially this past weekend at Las Vegas. I think you're going to be looking at that. And then, obviously, I think there's a really strong chance and opportunity that we're going to see them have a 4th car for All-Star car, bring guys like Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, even Ty Gibbs, and even other guys from the lower series, like other drivers, will probably have an opportunity to drive in those cars. I think it definitely will be interesting for sure to see what happens in regards to that. But Joe Gibbs Racing will be announcing their 2023 plans here in the not so distant future. And a lot of silly season stuff is coming over the next 2 weeks, including in the Truck Series Xfinity. It looks like Joe Gibbs is no exception. They'll be announcing their plans not too far down the road. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, is we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, last night on the race for the championship, we got a lot of insight on Kyle Busch leaving Joe Gibbs Racing and announcing he'd be going to Richard Childress Racing. It all started out with him and Sammy at the Busch having a realistic conversation with the cameras over there, basically talking with Mike Verlander, the president of Kyle Busch Motorsports, talking about switching teams. And they basically talked about how there were fake promises and false promises, which really, really hurt. But one quote from that episode that really got to me is something Kyle Busch said after Kansas. He says, something that's so disappointing to me and so hurtful about this whole situation with DGR is we were like family. For 15 years, Joe had my back in the stupidest of moments that Kyle Busch was. Like he was there for me. And then, boom, it was gone. That is such a hurtful comment, he said. Then later, he basically talked about the fact of him going over there, basically saying that Dale Jr. basically says that Kyle Busch is going to bring Richard Childress Racing back, the A-car back, and Kyle Busch says he can win championships instantly with Richard Childress Racing. Obviously, the relationship did not end on a really, really good note. We know that Kyle Busch really was not happy how things went down. We know that Joe has said that he wanted to keep Kyle Busch in the organization. But it's just so interesting here how Kyle Busch is just like, it really just ended like that, him basically leaving Joe Gibbs Racing. Because Kyle Busch was a franchise driver for 15 years for the team and brought a lot to Joe Gibbs Racing, including a lot of talent, including a few drivers who are going to be driving. He's one of the reasons a lot of drivers came around. And it's so disappointing to hear how things really went down. Now, him going to Rich Childress Racing next year, I said it earlier on social media last night, but I think Kyle Busch will be a championship threat in that A-car next year. You look at all the success that Kyle Busch has had, and with Joe Gibbs Racing, when he went over to Joe Gibbs in the 18 car, people thought that he was going to absolutely struggle with that ride. Well, he really didn't struggle with that ride. He did a really good job in that ride in the 18, went on to win multiple championships. Because remember, before he got to the 18 car, that 18 car was a complete mess. JJ Gilly struggled for the few years he was there, and the last years of Bobby Labonte's career at that team, really he struggled over there. So I think Kyle Busch going into next year, driving for Richard Childress Racing, I expect big things from Kyle Busch. I really think he's going to do a stellar and a really good job with the team, and I'm really excited to see what Kyle Busch can do at that team starting in 2023 with Richard Childress Racing. I'm expecting big things for Kyle Busch next year, to be honest. I think he will be a championship threat, especially since Tyler Reddick got them 3 wins this year and probably could win this weekend at Homestead, get a 4th win for the team. But I think it's going to be really fun to see Kyle Busch at RCR. I think them having 2-car focus, although there's talk that Richard Childress Racing could be a 3-car team next year. There's a lot of talk about that. And honestly, silly season's been definitely crazy for sure, no doubt about that. Kyle Busch going to Richard Childress Racing, something I don't think anybody expected, and we all thought he would stay at Joe Gibbs Racing for the rest of his career. And even Dale Jr. said Kyle Busch has still got 5 to 6 years left of his career, probably, where he's at his peak. So we'll definitely wait to see what happens in regards to that for sure. But I think Kyle Busch will absolutely be a championship threat. I thought his comments were very interesting and kind of hurtful in a sense, too, because I think Kyle really wanted to stay at Joe Gibbs Racing and finish his career with Toyota because he's helped that organization out so much. But it definitely hurts to hear this. But at the same token, at the same time, I'm really not surprised that this is kind of how it went down. We've seen Toyota cut a lot of their drivers. Now, Toyota, I think, will be set long-term if they can get a lot of development in there. There's a lot of good talent coming through their pipeline. There's a lot of drivers who've left Toyota over the last years, and Toyota's definitely hurting in a sense as well. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode, as we're going to talk about Kevin Harvick and the 41 car. Now, we've obviously talked about Kevin Harvick in the 41 car in the past as of recently. We talked about this on the channel a few days ago, but it was reported on Sunday basically that Kevin Harvick is in the conversations to probably retire at the end of 2023. And the big reason why they're in the conversations to potentially retire at the end of 2023 is basically because of recent facts that basically Kevin Harvick says he doesn't want to race past his contract and he would like to retire at the end of the 2023 season. Now, Stewart-Haas has tried to convince him to keep driving the number 4 car past 2023 and sign a contract extension with the team, but Kevin Harvick seems like he's not budging. Now, Kevin Harvick also talked about about he would like to retire, probably was thinking about retiring at the end of 2021, but he was convinced otherwise to stay past 2021 to extend through 2023. In contrast as well, there's a lot of conversation that potentially who's going to get in the 41 car, because Gene Haas wants to keep Cole Custer in the 41 car for one more year and have him another season. Despite his lack of results, they want to keep him in the 41 car next year. But obviously, Tony Stewart, the other co-owner of the team, he wants to basically go ahead and put Ryan Preece and give Ryan Preece a shot to drive the 41 car next season as well. So there's a lot of debate on who's going to be driving the 41 car next year as well. Let's start basically with the 41 car and talk about Cole Custer and Ryan Preece here just a bit. Cole Custer and Ryan Preece are probably two favorites to get in that ride next year. Let's start with Ryan Preece and who would I personally put in that ride. For me, if I had to make a choice of who's going to get in the 41 car, I would personally put Ryan Preece in the 41 car, and here's why. Cole Custer has done a really bad job in the 41 car. He does have a win. I'll give you that. He did win something Dale Suarez didn't do, which he didn't win with Stewart-Haas. But basically, Cole Custer did get a win in Kentucky. But in his whole career, Cole Custer has only scored one win in basically like 12 top 10s throughout his entire career. So he's really, really struggled. Credit to him, he has ran really well in Xfinity. He did really good with SS Greenlight. So I don't think Cole Custer is an untalented driver. I just think Cole Custer has been really kind of struggled in the Cup Series. But I don't want to give up on Cole Custer completely just yet. So where would I move Cole Custer if I moved him from the 41 car? Well, obviously, I put Cole Custer in a 15 Rick Ware Racing car. I think if Rick Ware, they basically gave him full work with the team, I do believe that that team would run really, really well, especially with Cole Custer. I think Cole is a talented driver. I think Cole Custer's been struggling in the 41 car this year. The other thing is that when you look at Ryan Preece and go talk about Ryan Preece now, I think Ryan Preece would perform a lot better. I think Ryan Preece would be absolutely a much better driver to get behind the wheel. And I think SHR would have a long-term future. There's also talk, of course, Eric Almirola, he may retire at the end of this season. There's a lot of talk he may, well, next year, I should say, because he's coming back to the 10 car next year. But there is a lot of talk that he may leave the team at the conclusion of the 2020. Basically, he would leave the team basically at the end of 2023 and potentially retire then, though he does have a multi-year deal with extension with the team. But I think there's a possibility that they could keep Preece in the 41 for 1 year, move him to the 4 car, and then bring Cole Custer back to the 41. But Cole Custer's got to step it up. If he's going to stay in SHR next year, if he does stay in the 41 car, he's got to step it up next year because, let's be honest, Cole Custer's probably on the hot seat. He really is on the hot seat because, let's be for real, he's really, really struggled. Now switch back to talk about Kevin Harvick. If Kevin Harvick does retire, he'll be the last driver really from that Winston Cup era to race because Kurt Busch, he's retired full-time competition. So at this particular point, when you look at this when it comes to Kevin Harvick, it is very likely, like I said, next year is probably going to be the last year for Kevin Harvick. And Kevin Harvick has basically said that 2023 is probably going to be the last year for him, though it's not said he's going to retire or not. But it sounds like he is. Going back to talk about Kevin Harvick, he's been a really, really successful driver at Stewart-Haas Racing. Has brought Stewart-Haas Racing a lot of success and a lot of championships. But when you also look at Kevin Harvick, if he does sign another contract, he'll probably be going past 50 years old, and he'll be 48 at the end of 2023. So I think next year is going to be the last year for Kevin Harvick. When you think about Kevin Harvick, you think about all success he's had. He's won 60 Cup races, has won the Southern 500, the Daytona 500, the Coke 600 a couple times. He's also won the Brickyard 400 as well, and has won a lot of major events throughout his career as well. In my opinion, I think Kevin Harvick is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's won a Cup championship in 2014. He's won 2 Xfinity Series championships, 2001 and 2006. And I think if he does retire, he'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Kevin Harvick's had a lot of success in racing, so I know it will be suck if Kevin Harvick does retire, but Kevin Harvick doesn't have to race if he doesn't want to anymore. He's had a lot of success in racing, and honestly, with Kevin Harvick and everything, if next year truly is the last year for Kevin Harvick, he's had a great career in my opinion, and Kevin Harvick has definitely had a lot of success. So he's had a lot of success in my opinion, and Kevin Harvick has definitely, for sure, been a really successful driver, and he's had a great career in my opinion. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're going to talk more about Bubba Wallace's suspension and the reactions from many in the industry that have given their thoughts and opinions on the Bubba Wallace suspension. So before we talk about that, let's talk about Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell basically said that Bubba basically apologized, speaking to the media today. I think Dustin Law reported on this, but Christopher Bell basically told the media that Bubba Wallace did go and apologize to him on the plane on the way home for the actions that he basically pulled. Let's now talk about why Bubba Wallace was suspended for one race. So Bubba Wallace, of course, was suspended a race this weekend at Homestead due to basically his actions on the track on this past weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. On lap 95 or lap 96 of the race, Bubba Wallace, Kyle Larson basically sent it into the corner, and Bubba got into the outside wall. Now, Bubba Wallace had every right to be frustrated at Larson, but he basically retaliated, right-reared him down the straightaway, and put him into the outside wall. After that, Bubba Wallace walked across the racetrack and basically got into a shoving match with Kyle Larson and also shoved an official as well. And his comments to the media, which I don't get mad about that anymore because he's not very happy and basically kind of went after Marty Snyder a little bit as well. Now let's talk about some of the reactions from the drivers and people in the industry. Kevin Harvick says that it's unacceptable what Bubba Wallace did and said it basically saved us from ourselves and protect us from ourselves from basically doing what they said. So Kevin Harvick basically saying that it's unacceptable that what Bubba Wallace did. I think he agrees with the penalties, which again I agree with Kevin Harvick on that one, that basically the penalty was justified. Kyle Petty's reaction, which is the second we're going to talk about, his reaction is a little bit more interesting. Basically, he says that Bubba Wallace should have been suspended for the rest of the season. He reiterates and kind of goes on and explains why he says Bubba Wallace should have been suspended for the rest of the year. He says right rear and down there, yeah, that should have been suspension. Walking across an active racetrack, that should have been a suspension. And he also talked about purposely shoving an official and the way he acted toward Larson. That should have been a suspension. Now, I will not 100% agree with Kyle Petty on his sentiments, but Kyle Petty, I'll give Kyle Petty this. Kyle Petty has been extremely consistent when it comes to this. He's been consistent about this a lot. There was a video that surfaced from Ben Schneider last night showing his consistency. So this is not the first time that Kyle Petty has been saying that drivers should be indefinitely suspended or suspended for the rest of the season. He's been consistent about that with Scott Speed and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He was consistent about that with Carl Edwards. He said Carl Edwards, when he retaliated against Brad Exoski when he nearly went up in the cash bins at Atlanta, he says that Carl Edwards should have been suspended for a minimum of 3 races. That's what he said. Basically, he also said that about Kyle Busch. He should have suspended for basically the rest of the season for that, even though Parsons would agree with him on that. But Kyle Petty was consistent about that as well. So that's where I think Kyle Petty's come from. And he also talks about how crew chiefs are suspended for 4 weeks for a tire coming off. We only suspend basically drivers for 1 week. He does have a very fair point. Now, for me, I would extend it maybe to a 2-race suspension because of walking across the racetrack. I would agree probably because NASCAR probably frowns upon that. I would say probably because he walked across an active racetrack. That probably could have been another race suspension for those actions. But the other actions are not outside of retaliating. I don't agree with suspending for that, but maybe a 2-race suspension would have been a little bit more of a fair penalty for walking across an active racetrack because he could have gotten in danger as well. But I'll say this. Let's now go to Joey Logano's penalty as well. Joey Logano basically, he says that basically what Bubba did was unacceptable, and that could have ended Kyle Larson's career and potentially could have ended Kyle Larson's life. And I don't think Logano's really exaggerating about that as well. I think that could have ended his life as well. Charbane also gave his thoughts on it, talking about he probably would have been suspended for 3 races as well. Now, going back to the whole thing when it comes to suspensions for basically crew chiefs for 4 weeks with the wheels coming off, I agree that that penalty needs to be reduced. I personally think that the 4-race suspension for that is absolutely ridiculous and absolutely stupid. I would reduce that to a 2-race suspension personally because I don't think it's going to be, I think it's going to be less safe to have the crew chief not there. Sure, it's unsafe to have a tire coming off, but I've been basically saying that I think the suspensions are a little bit ridiculous for 4 races. I think we should reduce it to 2 races maximum or even 1 race maximum for the wheel coming off. I think there needs to be penalties for a wheel coming off on track because it is dangerous, but we need to reduce that. Now, I've given my take and 2 cents on the whole Bubba Wallace situation. I've talked about it multiple times on the channel, and I'm hoping we really don't have to talk about this much more. My comment section has been a little bit critical, and I've had some interesting comments in my comment section about this. But look, what Bubba Wallace did was absolutely unacceptable. He right-reared somebody down the straightaway, and it doesn't matter how fast or slow a driver's getting, regardless of precedent. This has to be affiliated, and I don't care how fast or slow you're going. If you right-rear somebody down a straightaway on an active racetrack where cars are incoming, especially at the speed that we were going, I think that's dangerous. That's extremely dangerous and extremely unacceptable. If basically hits that outside wall and right-rears him, it hits the outside wall really, really hard. Driver's side especially since not to mention Bubba Wallace's teammate Kurt Busch, who basically just announced that same weekend, the day prior, not even 24 hours prior, announced that he would basically be retiring from full-time competition. That is just an extremely dangerous thing what Bubba Wallace did, and that could have actually ended Kyle Larson's career right there. And that could have been extremely dangerous and really, really bad. So in my honest and personal opinion, I think it's a fair penalty, a one-race suspension, but I would not have been personally against having a two-race suspension. Honestly, if they would have suspended Bubba Wallace for the rest of the year, I don't think that would have been the worst thing. Now, look, I know a lot of people also bring up what Joe Logano did 4 years ago. Logano's probably not going to do what he did 4 years ago. I mean, he raced Ross the same aggressively, but raced him also pretty clean as well. But going into this going forward, I do agree that there definitely actually should be a suspension for Bubba. I think NASCAR made the right call. I know that basically Dale Jr. has basically said as well that Bubba probably should not have gotten suspended and continue racing. I think having got your star driver there, I think that's going to hurt the pocketbooks for them as well. And even 2311 agrees what Bubba did was unacceptable, and they basically were not very happy with Bubba Wallace, it seems like. And I think that they basically showed that they're not really happy with what Bubba Wallace did, and it doesn't align to the core values of the team. And again, I think Bubba Wallace knows going forward, sitting out for a week, he's going to have time to reflect. I think what Bubba needs to do is he's got he's had an anger problem in the past. We talked about this, but he's had an anger problem in the past. You know, he threw water on Alex Bowman. I don't know if that's a really ingredient, but he threw water on Alex Bowman. And he's done some things that have been really controversial in the past. And he does have an anger and a temper from time to time. He's got to kind of control those emotions. If he's going to go out and win a championship going forward, he's going to have to start honing in and controlling those emotions, in my opinion. So I think the suspension is fair, and maybe we could have had 1 or 2 more races added, but I think it's interesting to hear the takes from guys like Kyle Petty and Kevin Harvick on that situation. I think it's definitely interesting for sure. So that is it for today's Law NASCAR and Motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel and notifications on to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links are below that. And comment your thoughts on today's video. Do you think the drivers are right in that situation or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Kevin Harvick potentially retiring at the end of the 2023 season? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on my channel, we're potentially going to have a double upload day on this channel. I did not have a video uploaded yesterday due to personal reasons I'm not going to get into here. I'll have a double upload day tomorrow with the Truck and Xfinity Series race reviews. And then on Sunday, we'll have a cup review from Homestead. And then Monday, we're going to basically have a NASCAR news video. And then on Tuesday, we are going to be having race picks for the upcoming race at Martinsville. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.